Good morning, Grand Rising, and welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton. And guess it's Friday, the 9th of May. It is exactly 9 a.m. British summertime. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the show that knows you can take a director of intelligence, White House, but you can't make them release the Epstein files. I'm joking, kids. What's on Wake Up today? Thank you for being here, by the way. We have a full and wonderfully packed house. I am absolutely thrilled with all of our guests today. We will start with one of our favorites, geopolitical journalist Warren Thornton. What is going on in Warren's world, I want to know, and I'm sure you do too. And we'll also be joined by PT SATISH SHARMA, aka the British Hindu. He's been with us before, and he's going to be looking at the big picture. What is really going on regarding India and Pakistan, and how does it impact the UK? And we will round out the show with scientist, explorer and author Michael Tellinger, live from South Africa, who will be talking to us about his life, his work and our hidden history and so much more. And thank you for being here. We have a full house. How are you all in the comments, you beautiful people? And we'll also be talking about MP Lucy Dogwhistle Powell. She's apologised. And I will review Madeleine McCann, the unseen evidence. And I'm doing it so you don't have to. And the data access bill, the latest problematic incarnation. And Starmer must apologise for demonizing people over riots, plus headlines and news and viewer emails. And we do news different around here. And you know why? Because someone had to. And that someone is us. How are you? Hello, beautiful people. Hello, Marlena and Shug and Stephen and Simon and Care Bear and Sally Ann and Shalini and Anne-Marie and our beautiful mods, Crazy Bunny, Soul Sound and Christine. It's live. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, and Lorna and Marcuson. Good morning to you all. I hope you are splendidly well. Splendidly well. And hello, Craig and Claire. And who else? Del and SJ and Teresa. Thank you all for being here. So, of course, big announcement from the Vatican, as you know, and a new pope, which is big news in the world, apparently. The Vatican announced the first ever US leader of the Catholic Church, Robert Prevost, who will be known as Pope Leo XIV. He's a 69-year-old cardinal. He was born in Chicago. He spent many years as a missionary in Peru. And it was actually Pope Francis who made him a cardinal in 2023. And significantly, he presided over one of Francis's most revolutionary reforms, which was adding women to the voting bloc. And which is, I mean, we're only in, 2025 people. And the MAGA lot are not happy. They're like, oh my God, they've been down his X timeline and they are not happy. It would appear that he's not necessarily singing from the same hymn sheet as them. And some of them already appear to be wanting to try and get him sacked, which is not really how it works when it comes to the Vatican. And so here's the thing, is that he's very interested in kind of like so-called socialist issues. And I say so-called because obviously we've been forced to reevaluate what any of these titles mean, haven't we? But so-called socialist principles, such as welcoming to immigrants and caring of the poor and needy, everything really that a church leader should be, oddly enough. And Curly Crew in our comments at the start of the show, good morning to you, lass, said, anyone else think there was a meaning behind Trump's AI Pope pick? Did he know the American man was going to be the next Pope? I didn't think for 1 minute he was mocking the church. Wouldn't be surprised. Well, you and I are thinking about two different things, Curly Crew. But interesting. And I really appreciate the input that we get from our viewers, because oftentimes it makes me think, which ain't no bad thing, frankly, ain't no bad thing. Right, Lucy Powell, Labour MP and leader of the House of Commons. Remember, BBC radio programme last Friday in which Tim Montgomery, commentator, raised up the issue of the Channel 4 documentary to do with grooming gangs, and she described grooming gangs as a dog whistle and a little trumpet. And we had Raja Mir on the show on Monday talking about it, about how it's not just a comment, it's about a whole culture that exists within Labour in terms of cover up regarding the grooming gangs. Anyway, she said she's sorry. And I think she's sorry, really, for revealing what the Labour government really think of survivors of child abuse. And she said, I would never want to leave the impression that this should be shied away from and not aired. Let's have a little listen to Lucy and see how sincere you think she is. Let me just find her. Here she is. There we go. Let's give it a shot.
For raising with me what I said in an episode of Any Questions last week, so I can be absolutely clear with the House today, especially to the victims and survivors of child sexual abuse and grooming gangs, that I am very sorry for those remarks, as I made clear over the weekend. I and every member of this government want your truth to be heard, wherever that truth leads. Your truly appalling experiences need to be acted on, for those responsible to be accountable and face the full force of the law, and for justice to be served. I would never want, Mr. Speaker, to leave the impression that these very serious, profound and far-reaching issues, which I have campaigned on for many years, should be shied away from and not aired.
Well, the only problem for Miss Lucy Powell is people have now been finding old footage of her. And one part of old footage was from 2017, following the Manchester Arena terror attacks, of course, which is very controversial. And not everybody believes the official narrative regarding that. But she was asked about that because she's a Labour MP for the Manchester area. And she was asked about that. And she even talked then about how we have to be really careful about demonizing people, certainly when it comes to Islam, as one example. So there was a lot of protectionism going on there, and we know why regarding the Labour Party. But anyway, she said, I would never want to leave the impression that this should be shied away from and not aired. I have campaigned for many years, no stone unturned. She's not the only person who likes to use that expression. Kate and Jerry McCann like to use that expression, and it would appear that there are many stones unturned, of which we will discuss later. Anyway, she said that we're going to be implementing the recommendations from the child abuse inquiry. She said, which have remained sitting on the shelf until we came into government. They remain sitting on the shelf. It's absolutely true. The Conservative government failed to implement even one recommendation for the child abuse inquiry. And I would argue that the only reason that Labour are now considering it is because of the whole hoo-ha, which is, erupted this year. That's kind of my thoughts on it anyway. So question is really, do you consider what she's just said to be genuine? Is she genuine? And what she said is that Baroness Louise Casey is doing a new report into grooming gangs. Every police force in England and Wales have been asked to look again at the issue of grooming gangs. And she said she wants to leave the House in no doubt to my commitment to these issues. Indeed. Milford and Jan and more in the comments do not believe that that was a sincere apology. I'm shocked, kids. I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. Right. Yesterday, obviously, VE Day in the UK. And I just have to comment on this, albeit very, very briefly. How interesting that it was the day that Kanye West chose to release his new song, which is called Heil Hitler. And essentially, most part of the song is N-word, Heil Hitler, N-word, Heil Hitler. I'm not saying the N-word. I ain't doing it. And because I know how awful that can be and how you can get caught out on that kind of stuff. And I ain't up for it. Anyway, he released that on VE Day. People were like, what the heck? This is Kanye, in which he talks about not being able to see his children. And he has talked about his ex-wife, Kim, being involved in child trafficking. All of this, of course, of his allegations, certainly not mine. But the imagery to accompany it was really, it's quite, you see, the thing about Kanye is he likes stark imagery. Let me just see if I can, if I have one of these images to hand. And if I don't, I don't. What's that? No, that's something else altogether. I might be able to show you something a little bit later. I don't want to waste any time in finding it because it's not that huge. And just before I bring in Warren, I have to say that I'm irritated to discover that the US have not completely ended beagle testing. I talked about this on Wednesday, and I talked about this because Jay Bhattacharya had been in an interview in which he'd said that animal testing is essentially absolutely pointless. It doesn't transfer to humans. And he certainly left everybody with the impression that he has whipped through, as the director of the NIH in the US. He certainly gave people the impression that he'd whipped through and closed down these laboratories. Actually, that's not true. And I do object to this because one of the reasons that he gave that interview in which he revealed that information was he said a lot of people take the good that they do and turn it into something negative. Well, if you don't want people to do that, Jay, then you need to speak more clearly and with no room for confusion. Simple stuff. And the Beagle Freedom Project put out a series of tweets just saying that they've contacted the NIH to offer immediate placement for any beagles affected by the recent changes, because apparently only one lab has been shut down. And according to the Beagle Freedom Project, who actually, frankly, I trust above and beyond any politician at this stage, says that the worst tests are still legal in the US and funded by the NIH. Thousands of dogs remain at risk. They say this isn't the finish line, but it's proof change is possible. And yes, we need to keep moving in that direction that Jay talked about. And that is the animal experimentation is no substitute for the real thing. And that is actually, if it's for human medicines, human vanity, whatever, you can actually now that they're saying you may be able to use AI as an example for that. But animals certainly should not be used for either human vanity or so-called human health, when we know for a fact that whatever works on a dog is not going to work on me. Fact, absolute fact. Right. So I want to bring in our first guest. Let me just check he's all there. He is. Here he is. He's looking lovely and sharp. Let's go. Let's go. It's Warren Thornton. Hello, Warren Thornton.
Hello, Sonia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, my love?
Absolutely buzzing. 34 degrees here and very, very nice and balmy, I should say.
Tell people where you are.
Well, I'm just off the coast of Manila, of course, because we like to hang around the Chinese embassy quite a lot to find out what's going on with trade tariffs and what's going on with the
sounded proper dodgy, Warren. That sounded dodgy. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And it's lovely to have you with us. And the thing, obviously, one of the reasons that we love you so much around here is you have your fingers in all these different pies, which is absolutely wonderful. So where to start, really? I mean, I want to leave this as Warren's world. Where would you like to start?
I think the first thing we have to do is look at where we're going to go with Ukraine and Russia. Once again, what they basically did was they tried to take the deal, not the Witkoff deal. They tried to take the Kellogg deal. Now, America started this war. And of course, they were trying to finish it on their own terms. And it's simply not going to happen. Zelensky has voted himself in for the next 6 months. He's been ratified by his own parliament. If he does accept any of, shall we say, Russia's terms, literally his own side will assassinate him. So he's not going to do that. There's going to be no peace. He has threatened to bomb the May 9th parade. That is, I would turn around and hazard a guess that is complete nonsense, because, of course, China have sent him a private message saying very well. They didn't send a private message to Zelensky. They sent it to Starmer and Macron, saying that by all means, if you fire anything in anywhere near our president, then of course we will be joining the war on Russia's side, and we will certainly strike back at any countries that we feel have taken part in those strikes. So I think Zelensky has been told to get back in his pram, as it were.
I thought we were all heading for peace now after the signing of the deal last week, the mineral deal. Is that not the case?
No chance. So basically what is happening is this is trying to tie Trump into this long and protracted war, because if we do a mineral deal, now remember they've had a mineral deal with the EU since 2021. And of course, this isn't a mineral deal, really. This is oil and gas, because there are no more minerals to go around. Russia is sitting on 40% of those minerals. So where are you going to get the money to pay the Americans? Basically, this mineral deal is nothing more than a huge, shall we say, money laundering scam, because, of course, all the money from America or weapons from America will go into Ukraine as part of the deal. And, of course, Ukraine will pay that with the money from the minerals or the oil and the gas. And, of course, that will find its way to, shall we say, various interested parties. So really, this is just a washing machine for your cash, really.
This is actually really, I mean, it's really disappointing to hear this, because I did think at least that the military industrial war machine was going to be moving on. But what you're actually saying is that isn't the case at all.
Well, it is one of those. Trump could end up having his own private Vietnam. Certainly when he turned around and said that I will take exactly what, of course, the ridiculous deal of the ceasefire. That's never going to happen. Now, Russia have made it very, very clear from the start of the SMO. They want a demilitarization and a denazification of Ukraine as well as NATO. Now, you don't denazify Ukraine unless you remove the current leadership that are in charge of that country. So until you remove Zelensky, then you're not going to actually achieve any of those aims. And Russia are always saying, look at the root causes. And the root causes of one of those. If you have a peace, Sonia, because you've got these neo-Nazi lunatics, who, by the way, would you believe took part in a VE parade day against beating the Nazis? Quite incredible. If you have a peace deal, they're still going to go in there and kill ethnic Russians. So this is never going to solve the problem.
It's really quite shocking. Trump seems to be at the center of everything in the universe, doesn't he? You okay there, Warren? You got a cold?
I've had sort of heavy flu for a couple of days, but that's pretty seasonal around here when the seasons tend to change. So, but we are recovering nicely.
All out, get your body all ready for summer. Yeah. Oh, yeah, wonderful. Actually, although it's probably a different season for you, who knows? But yeah, so Trump is at the center of everything, right? So yesterday he was trumpeting about this trade deal to do with the UK, Starmer, and what he was saying. He's full of hyperbole, isn't he? But it is the first trade deal since his so-called Liberation Day. What he said was the agreement with the United Kingdom is a full and comprehensive one that will cement the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom for many years to come. He goes on to say much, much more. What can you tell us about that deal, Warren?
What I can tell you is it's big on hype, very scanty on details. Now, very simply, what they're going to do is it will certainly the motor industry, the tariffs in there will benefit both sides. But the one thing about this deal that is very, very troubling is the fact that Starmer has certainly been selling up and closing down lots and lots of farmland, which is going to go to BlackRock, which of course is then going to go to green energy companies as well to put all solar panels on left, right, and centre. And of course, there's a huge one in Spain that they're going to copy that. Now, we're going to be buying our beef from America. Now, this is a bit like the liquid natural gas. So we're closing down our farmland so we can buy beef from America. That sounds absolutely crazy. And of course, we did the same with liquid natural gas. We decided that we weren't going to buy the gas from Russia. So Russia sells it to India, India sell it to America, and we buy it for 6 times the price.
I mean, I'm sure you have a bigger view about this than I do, which is why I'm about to ask you, really. And that is, why do we on a constant basis feel the need to keep importing? I mean, at the examples you just used, beef as one example, we have cows, right? We have our own cows. And as you say, they're closing down farmland. So this doesn't track for regular people when they just hear this, because they're like, why aren't we promoting our own industries?
Yeah, we absolutely don't, because it's a World Economic Forum thing. To basically green up the planet and everything else, which of course is an absolute scam. And of course, the World Economic Forum have their plans set inside. You were talking about Bill Gates turning up. He's the guy who wants to put insects and mealworms in your food. So it is one of those where they're steering you towards this net zero, which is a disaster, as we've seen from Spain and Portugal. No Russian collusion in there whatsoever, just an idiotic idea of using solar energy and wind energy, which is going to fluctuate. And of course, you're talking about lab processed meat that they're going to be pushing your way. And any that we do import, of course, is going to be very, very pricey, and therefore price normal people out of the market. That means your politicians and, shall we say, your industry people will be able to eat their meat, and you'll be eating whatever cockroaches or insects Bill Gates wants to put in your lab processed food.
So really what you're saying about this deal is it's kind of all talk and like no major substance to it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like the minerals deal when you turn around with Ukraine, and you turn around and you say, well, how are you going to make money off of this if Russia are sitting on 40% of these minerals, and you're talking the EU have the other percentage of those minerals? Where's the mineral deal there for America? It isn't. Basically, Zelensky's just sold his country down the river, because now they can literally take all of Ukraine's oil, natural gas, and other substances. The minerals deal is just it's a showcase for, one, laundering money, and two, for being able to rape Ukraine of whatever they've got left in the coffers.
Craig in the comments said, I thought we were aiming for net zero. How is importing millions of people as well as things we can grow here? Make it make sense, please. I don't think we can make it make sense because it's not sensible people who are announcing these policies, is it, Warren?
No, absolutely not. When you think there are how many million, I think something like 580 million exist below the poverty line. And of course, instead of helping them, they are literally breeding or having children or whatever you want to call it. But it's rising by 40 million every single year. So if you take 1 million immigrants a year and dump them into 30, 40 countries in Europe, you're not even making a drop in the ocean. So why don't we help them in their countries there? Lift them out of poverty, bring them up to the same level as our countries, rather than the absolute lunacy of the illegal immigration that we have currently.
Yeah, fair point. And Markson makes a point that I think many of us will understand, and that is America, the unhealthiest nation, wants to export their shite. Oh, they already did. Cough, cough, McDonald's. I mean, that is the reality. Obesity is off the scale in America. I wouldn't be looking to eat necessarily. I don't eat meat anyway. But you take my point. It's like it's ridiculous. It just feels that we lose whichever way we turn in the UK.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, they unveiled a DEI statue of diversity where they showed a rather portly and ample black woman. There's a statue there now. So it's but of course, that has now come under all sorts of ridicule because it's not seen as the Statue of Liberty. It's seen as the statue of obesity. And they're saying it's sponsored by KFC, which, of course, is something that the Americans tend to eat quite a lot of. So that has backfired, and this diversity and the, shall we say, the health of Americans is not good. So why we would want to follow that is quite beyond me.
Absolutely. I want to switch to the whole thing with Epstein because there's obviously this massive MAGA backlash at the moment. We keep hearing from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. Oh, we're releasing. They're over 100 days in. They were like, we're going to release on the first day and all that. Before we go, I get your take. I just want to play the exchange between Senator Kennedy and Kash Patel. Have a listen to this.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, I found that interesting because what they're saying is we're forced to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. We will have to censor it. What was your take on that?
It's absolute rubbish for me. This is just like something out of Yes Minister. In the fullness of time, at the appropriate juncture, we'll release this evidence. Now, I'm not being funny. We had the ridiculous dossier, didn't we? Which was given to various TikTokers and everything else at the White House. Here we go. Here's the Epstein list. And it turned out to be an absolute damp squib. And it was nothing. And they're saying, well, we've got to go through tons and tons of videos of Epstein with young children. Well, I'm not being funny, Sonia. We don't need to see the videos of Epstein with young children. What we need and what Pam Bondi has to bring out, and she has to bring it out right now, and Kash Patel as well, they have to give us the list of all the people who've been on those flight logs, who've been on the island. And of course, they have to fire the person who, first of all, shall we say, got rid or tried to block Pam Bondi having that information.
So I think what's interesting, obviously, we've seen so much. There's so much available online. We have Jeffrey Epstein address book, and I have seen some flight logs. Obviously, there's been some redactions as well. I'm wondering, what information that we could actually see that could be new that they would be prepared to release? Because my great fear is that there are two main issues that are the sticking plaster for them. One is Jeffrey Epstein's association with their boss, Donald Trump, and two is the involvement of Mossad and Israel. And we all know that the US administration is up to their eyeballs, although there was talk yesterday, which I'd like to get a response from you on, about the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump in a minute. But what do you think the reason is for all of these delays? There is plainly, they're plainly delaying it now.
Yeah, absolutely they are. There is certainly a Mossad connection there. Let's face it, if you've got honey traps or you've got things against people who are doing all sorts of ridiculous and disgusting activities, you can use that in the field of espionage. I've seen that happen on many, many occasions when I was working, obviously, as a soldier in intelligence and everything else, along with embassy staff. And embassy staff very much like to collect, shall we say, notable scalps when it comes to, and of course, embassy staff quite often get sent home when they get caught in honey traps of their own while they're working abroad. I've seen that on numerous occasions. So there's no doubt that Mossad is involved here. And that they have various assets that they are still using and working. But here's the thing. All you need to do is turn around and put out the list of the people who were on that island. Now, they can come out. Here's the thing that is really troubling, Sonia. They can come out, can't they, and go, yes, I went to Epstein Island. I didn't know what was going on. I'm shocked, I'm appalled, this is that and the other. But not one of these people has stepped forward and go voluntarily and gone, I went to Epstein Island. I didn't see anything. Shout away how you like. Everybody has gone undercover. Nobody is talking about it. Nobody wants to know about it. We have more coverage of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard than we do of literally all these people who have gone to Epstein Island. You look at P. Diddy and what is going on there. We're in the third or fourth day of the trial. Hardly anybody's talking about it. You are. But the mainstream media are strangely quiet on this. Now, we need to know the names for the victims, and we spoke to, obviously, Jennifer Guskin, who was one of the trafficked victims of the Epstein case. Now, how they cannot name these people, she named, and is it okay for me to name them here?
No, that's defamation.
Yeah, well, she has named 3 people when we interviewed her live on air to show exactly how easily you can do this.
And so without naming them, though, are we talking about people who are still existing, people still in power?
Yes, we're talking about somebody who once ran for a president, one of the biggest pop stars in the world, and one of the ex-judges or ex-mayors, I should say, or ex-attorney generals of New York, who is very close to Donald Trump.
And her claim is that they were all involved, and Epstein was the go-to who was involved in it all. That's her claim to you?
Yes, she was trafficked for 10 years. She said that the judge or the mayor or lawyer, the attorney general that was very close to Trump, attended many, many parties, but not those kind of parties. Madonna was obviously one of those people who was floating around at the time, and that is common knowledge. So I can say that name, no problem at all. But she is saying that she saw a very large pop star who attended one of these parties, and of course they weren't allowed to look at actually allowed to look at her, but she stole a glance. And of course, the one that she's absolutely nailing is an ex-presidential candidate who she saw made to perform acts on children, and she witnessed it. Now, this guy once ran for president for the Democrats.
Very serious allegations here,
Yes.
extremely serious. And it's especially because this is literally not the narrative that we've been fed about Epstein. I've said for a long time that the narrative we've been fed about Epstein, this whole idea that it was teenage girls who were going to give him and his mates massage, was it was a red herring. And actually the real issue that was going on there was the abuse of children. And what we're hearing, Pam Bondi, for one example, is claiming to have tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children regarding abusing them. And as you say, we're not interested in the videos. We just want the details. This is not, I just don't think it's going to come out in our lifetime. And also there is obviously the suggestion that a great deal of these files have already been destroyed anyway, Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing they need to do is throw the guy under the bus who hid away the evidence that Pam Bondi couldn't put out in the first place. Why has he not been charged? Why has he not been thrown in jail? Why have we not got all these names out there? You can give us the names of the people who attended the flight logs. That doesn't mean to say that they are guilty. They can come out and turn around and say, yes, I attended it. I am not guilty. I didn't see anything. They can come out and say that, but they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're staying very, very quiet. Obviously, Israel do not want this stuff coming out. That is absolutely key in this, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as I'm concerned, if it doesn't come out in the next week, then both Kash Patel and Pam Bondi should be fired immediately.
Oh, there you go. Very, very definite words there from Warren Thornton, from warrenthornton.com. Warren is, of course, a geopolitical and investigative journalist, I would go so far as to say, and a good one at that. Warren, it's been absolutely lovely having you with us. Have a tremendous weekend. Take good care of yourself. Thank you. Warren Thornton, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to have him. Get well soon. Get well soon. Take care. Lovely to have him with us. And very definite, decisive words there from Warren Thornton. And when I saw that, and I just wonder what you think in the chat to Kash Patel responding that Epstein killed himself, because I certainly don't believe for a second that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. But maybe Kash Patel, because the thing is, obviously, when you are in the American administration, you can't necessarily talk the same as you would when you were outside of it, right? And remember, Kash Patel was all, I'm going to close down the Hoover building on day one and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of it is bravado. And their boss is particularly good at that. But we need reality. We don't need bravado and we don't need hyperbole. And because this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a situation where actually the gap of them telling us what has really taken place can potentially create more problems than it can resolve. And there is a great deal that is said about this. And obviously this is in the wake of the suicide of Virginia Giuffre. And we've yet to get more details on that. But this is a situation that is not going away anytime soon. So on that note, I want to welcome in my next guest. We have a very, very busy show full of very wonderful people. And our next guest has been with us before. Let us welcome him in. Here he is. There he is. Lovely to have you with us. PT SATISH SHARMA. Wonderful to have you with us, SATISH. You are, of course, known as the British Hindu. You're an author. You're a fellow of the Royal Asiatic Society. You're many things, and you're a really good individual that comes with a great deal of clarity. Thank you for joining us. I very much appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm very well, Sonia. A pleasure to join you so early in the morning as well.
I know. We're bright and early.
No, it's wonderful. And thank you for addressing this particular issue. The means that you have introduced to inform the general public of information that is just not getting through the mainstream media is so vital. I think as we build a consensus, we need really good quality information. So you're doing a remarkable job. I applaud you and your courage.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. You, of course, have come on to give us some clarity of what's going on regarding India and Pakistan. So, I mean, it can be quite confusing for people. Many people believe that this is about a dispute over Kashmir, but it's much more than that, isn't it? And it seems to have escalated so suddenly. Legacy media are telling us that it will escalate much more. We are looking at World War III here, and but even I, without my knowledge of the area of what's going on, I can see that there are other forces at play, that there's a bigger agenda here. And there is so much confusion. And so I've invited you on to bless us with some of your clarity about this situation. Help me understand what is really going on.
I will do my best. Firstly, there are two dimensions to this. One is the British dimension, the factors which are going to affect the streets of the United Kingdom. And I've been monitoring some of the rhetoric which is now being totted out. And it does seem to me as though there are drumbeats trying to stoke conflict on the streets of the United Kingdom, making all sorts of allegations that there will be civil war and so on and so forth. And this is so far from the truth. I don't think that we will have civil war at all between the Hindu community and the Muslim community, nor indeed between the Pakistani community and the Indian origin community. There's no reason why there should be war. And there is one aspect which I think we should all stand up for, and that is the rule of law. Criminality, it doesn't matter who the person is and what their justification is. Ultimately, Lady Jurisprudence has her eyes blindfolded so she cannot see the identity. She should look at the action. If it's a criminal action, then the law should be applied to its fullest extent, including the aspect of using force as a deterrent to prevent other people inflicting criminality on or engaging in criminality on the streets of the United Kingdom. That's the ideal. I have to admit, this current government doesn't give me a great deal of comfort that it will adhere to that principle. If it doesn't adhere to protecting innocent people from criminals, then I think we have an unpredictable situation. That's my only real concern. And turning to the two parties who are involved, it's too easy for British mainstream media commentators to establish a false equivalence, and they do this all the time. If I can just remind your viewers of Leicester, in the Troubles, as they're called in Leicester, over 100 Hindu homes were attacked. Not a single Muslim home was attacked. 2 Hindu temples were attacked. Not a single mosque was attacked. And yet everybody was talking about the conflict, the riots between Hindus and Muslims. And the facts would tell a different story. I have a suspicion that what's happening on the northwest frontier is being treated in the same manner. There are false equivalences now being created, and I'd just like to set the record straight.
Please.
This current conflict is probably the 5th conflict, and the previous 4 wars that have been fought in India have all been fought when Pakistani military personnel invaded into nationally acknowledged Indian territories. There have been 4. The last significant one was in 1971. It's also noteworthy that at that time, when Pakistan invaded India, the British sent troop carriers to support Pakistan and to deny Indians the right to protect themselves.
Interesting.
And I say the British being the British government. I always draw a distinction between the people of the United Kingdom and the British government.
Good.
And I think that's something worth emphasizing. We're on the same battle when it comes to that difference, I'm afraid. And so in this particular instance, a number of terrorists who came from across the Pakistan border, who were supported by entities across the Pakistan border, who have acknowledged their responsibility for the action. They came across the border, identified a tourist spot where there were several, I think about 30 tourists, and the tourists were asked a question at gunpoint: were they Muslim? And irrespective of what they said, they were then forced to remove their undergarments so that the terrorists could identify whether they were circumcised or not. And then the ones who were clearly not Muslim, not just Hindus, there was also a Christian amongst them, were executed at point blank range. The horror continued in that many of them were honeymooners, recently newlyweds, and only the men were killed, and their wives were told ridiculous statements like "go and tell Modi," etc., etc.
This is a level of savagery I struggle to get my head around, really. And but do you feel that we are getting an accurate picture of the conflict and the parties involved?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. You mentioned earlier that there are extra India-Pakistan agencies that work here, and there are, without a doubt. I mean, Hamas, before the activities of the 22nd, had declared support for the terrorist groups in Pakistan and said they would be working with Pakistan. And there are always people who make a huge amount of profit in chaos and war, looking for new, fresh areas, new killing fields where they can then pile in and play their global game of geopolitics. But there is a lesson which I think some of the warmongers have failed to realize, and that is that when you leverage hatred, when you instill hatred in people so that they can engage in such horrific acts, I just shudder to think of the mindset of a young man who can hold an AK-47 to a husband and say to his wife, "I'm sorry," well, not even "I'm sorry," but there is something missing in that person. Hatred has completely consumed that person, and they have lost their ability to judge between right and wrong. If you unleash hatred, the consequences are entirely unpredictable, and inevitably hatred comes back to haunt the people who are leveraging it.
I mean, people are dead, though, as a consequence of this conflict. I've seen some horrendous images. They've not been generated. They're factual, aren't they?
Correct, absolutely. There is more than ample evidence, but I also recall the incidences across the Israeli border when people were streaming their own atrocities as they were committing them.
Right.
And yet a global conglomerate sort of joined together to deny the veracity of what were actually admissions and confessions being video recorded and broadcast live.
We get that a lot, don't we? People struggle to believe, because the problem is that we're living in a world, and certainly online, where it's very difficult to know if what you're actually seeing is the reality. And I think that AI has obviously contributed to that. And I wonder whether that's deliberate as well, just to create even more confusion to the pot. But I just wonder whether, because it's clearly a very dire situation, and I do wonder how it impacts the UK. And the thing is, the UK give foreign aid to both Pakistan and to India. So we have some role in this, do we not?
So let's just clarify this, because this is often put forward and touted. India, many, many years ago, over a decade ago, said to Britain, we don't need your foreign aid. In fact, our fertilizer budget in our annual budget is greater than the amount of foreign aid that you have given us over the last decade or so. So let's put that into perspective. And so although it's entitled foreign aid, it's actually very specifically directed towards activities in India whereby British companies benefit from engaging in those activities. So it's not foreign aid. The word aid implies a power imbalance. It's not the same when it comes to Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan is not a democracy, it's a theocracy. And it's the worst of two in that it's a theocracy, but it's also run by a military junta and has been since inception. It's actually what we call a garrison state, masquerading as a democracy. So the vast majority of funding which goes from the United Kingdom goes towards a military dictatorship. And it's worth recognizing this. The amount of money that Britain has given is extraordinary. I was doing a little bit of research. Between 2015 and 2019, Pakistan was the largest recipient of UK's aid. It received £463 million in 2016, 305 million in 2019. And over the past 5 years, I think it's almost 700 million has been received by Pakistan in foreign aid. And this is going to the military garrison state that Britain has been propping up. It's indisputable that the atrocities that have been committed on the minorities in Pakistan are ethnic cleansing. There were 24% of Hindus in Pakistan in 47. They're down to 2% now.
Wow.
And that is by design, as opposed to by accident or osmosis or anything like that. Britain, I'm afraid, the British government has been supporting a genocidal government in Pakistan ever since its inception. It does bear a lot of responsibility for what's going on there, I'm afraid.
That's a huge statement, a massive statement. We've heard so much this week, haven't we, about the UK and trade regarding India as well. Very controversial at the start of the week. And it just, sometimes you can go for a very long time without any actual news, then you get a glut of it. And then suddenly India is all over the world headlines. What is this? Is this by design? What is this? What's going on?
I think there is a great opportunity in this. Firstly, I can appreciate that the public of the United Kingdom, who have been battered on all sides for the best part of 5 years, particularly since the new administration came in, are very, very fragile at the moment, and rightfully so. They have been diminished to such a degree. They've been put at the bottom of a list. In fact, to be a British citizen now, there is very little benefit. The only aspect is that it's a contractual obligation to pay taxes, otherwise you're deemed to be a criminal. There's very little left. So I can understand how they would treat any news such as this with huge suspicion.
Yeah.
I think the negative aspects of this have been overrated. They have not been fully understood. It does not mean a glut of Indians are going to come into the country and take jobs, etc., etc. But in addition to that, this is an arrangement that exists with over 50 other nations. The arrangement that has been put in there, it's a standard sort of you scratch our back and we'll scratch your back sort of a deal. There is reciprocity involved in this. But I think more importantly, there is the potential for a great advantage to be taken on an economic level. But I have to say, this British government, the current government, its ability to grasp defeat from the jaws of victory, I think shouldn't be understated. I don't think that's a problem. I think there's a great deal to be of advantage to be leveraged from this if we have the wherewithal to do it. And so I'm not too troubled by that. I'm hoping that this trade agreement will encourage the British deep state not to create chaos on that northwestern border. From that perspective, Prime Minister Modi, I think, should be recognized for having pulled off a masterstroke. In the past, when Pakistan has attacked, Britain has always sided with Pakistan, and now there is a tangible cost if it does so again. So you can see the geopolitics of this playing out. But one thing we have to find a solution for. The only group who are going to challenge the current hegemony of the British government are white young men. If they can come together as a consensus, they are the one group who will come together and say, actually, we're not going to cooperate with a government which tries to destroy us economically, emotionally, culturally, and in terms of our loyalty to this soil. That is the only group who can come forward and do this. And so
why do you say that? Why do you say that, the only group? That's because it sounds very kind of weird to my ears, because I'm part of a group that you just said is not coming forward. So talk to me about that.
It's a numbers thing. Ultimately, the only thing that has reined in a runaway British establishment has been enough young men coming forward, supported by partners and mothers and sisters and daughters as well. And they've stepped forward time and time again and said, no, this is not good enough. We are not going to cooperate. And so there is a huge effort to try and build a consensus. Mr. Robinson, for example, he is a voice of a certain demographic. And that demographic, if it comes together, builds a consensus and say, actually, we are loyal to the indigenous people of this land. We are loyal to this soil. And we don't believe the government is acting in the interests of us as citizens whose ancestors, grandparents have fought and died and given blood to protect this civilization. We will not let this continue. If they manage to get that consensus, then I think we've got a hope that we can actually do something very positive and save the people of the United Kingdom.
Very interesting.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, I like that. But it's very interesting you mention that particular demographic, of course, because we often hear, and certainly over the last, I'd say, decade, about how disenfranchised white British men are, very specifically that demographic. What do you think about that?
Time and time again. It's absolutely true. If one were to look at poetry from pre the Second World War, you will hear the drumbeat saying to the young white men of these islands, rise up and defend this and defend that. And they have responded. In fact, the last time I came across that, I think I mentioned it before, there's a poem by Shelley where he talks about the working classes of this country. And he appeals to them to rise up after the Peterloo massacre. And right. He concludes by saying, remember, ye are many, they are few. Right. So he's appealing to the working people of the country to stand up and recognize that they're in the majority. And if they can get a consensus formed, if they can find the confidence to say, we need to come together and act for the protection of the ordinary people of the United Kingdom, then I think that will actually be a challenge to the British establishment. I have a vision in my mind of Parliament Square and all of the area around being filled just by silent, young, white, working class men, not saying anything, but just by their presence projecting an incredible resolve. And that, I think, will be a wonderful development for the ongoing peace and tranquility and evolution in this country.
Interesting. Very interesting you say that, obviously, because you're not a young white man. I mean, you're young. You're certainly young. And you're certainly a man. And you're a man. So you don't feel that what you just said is exclusionary?
So let me spell this out. I've been in the United Kingdom for the best part of 60 years.
Yeah.
I grew up with young white men, and we knew what the far right really was. That was the time when the far right was tangible, right? At this moment in time, I actually feel offended when I hear somebody like Keir Starmer appropriate the voice of people who should rightfully be frightened of the far right, and then claim some sort of virtue in representing us. Afraid not. I have friends who I've grown up with who have children. They're all young, they're all white, they're men and women, and I have absolutely no grounds at all to fear the far right in this country. And so I think this is an issue which we need to deal with. The white young men and women I've grown up with are thoroughly decent, respectful, honest and hard-working people. They do not want to participate in the global geopolitics that some of our Westminster elite are determined to drag us into. And as one of America's philosophers said, an Englishman is the best of all men, and the British are the worst of all of God's creatures. And I think we're seeing that played out more and more. But I do think, Sonia, yourself and the group who are actually trying to get a decent consensus going in defense of the people of the United Kingdom have your work cut out, but it's absolutely critical. And if there is a message to be given to young, white, working class men, it says don't buy into this undermining, this emotional gaslighting, which is trying to diminish your role at this moment in time and your potential to achieve greatness. The potential to achieve greatness is a divine blessing, and far be it for any politician to deprive you of that.
Wonderful sentiment. I like that very much. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. And you've actually created the most perfect segue in order for me to discuss what I need to discuss next, which is about a new police report, which has found that it wasn't far right that were involved in the protests following Southport last week. So I appreciate very much you giving me that opening. Everybody, this is PT SATISH SHARMA, and we very much appreciate him. Have a lovely weekend, SATISH.
And you too, Sonia. More power to your elbow.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. Lovely to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Lovely to see him. Lovely to see him. And he has actually given me the most brilliant segue into what I want to talk about and next. And that is this whole idea of, I think, first of all, that Keir Starmer is actually due to give the British people a public apology. Absolutely needs to happen. There's this report into what followed the Southport attacks. Obviously, 3 young girls, BB King, Elsie Stankham, Alice de Silva Aguirre, they were all murdered in a knife attack by Axel Rudakabana on the 29th of July, 2024. And following that, there was widespread unrest, serious disorder that broke out in many towns and cities across the UK. There's been a number of police reports about this, but this is the most recent one. This has come this week, an inspection of the police response to the public disorder in July and August 2024. Many people have been involved. I'm just looking at some of the figures of who contributed to this. This is in tranche 1. There's tranche 1 and there's tranche 2. So in tranche 1, there was 140 interviews. In tranche 2, there was 70 interviews. They interviewed more than 200 police officers and police staff at regional and national level. They heard evidence from other interested parties. Who else was involved? Let me see. They also interviewed academics specializing in open source research. They interviewed Ofcom, the regulator for communication service. They interviewed people from other government bodies. In total, the whole review, they scrutinized over 700 reports and other documents. And these included police force reports, impact assessments, intelligence reports, strategic risk assessments. And what did they conclude? They concluded out of all of this, that they had absolutely no evidence to suggest it was a far right organized series of protests. And here's where it's really bad. Is it obviously Demon? I'm just literally going to call him Demon Starmer. I mean, where do you go with that? Literally, Keir Starmer came out and demonized people for raising very serious concerns, legitimate concerns about what is going on regarding uncontrolled mass immigration to the UK. And these are legitimate concerns. They should be addressed rather than demonizing people. And so Keir Starmer came out and he was very categoric that the people who were involved in these unrests were far right, right? And absolutely not. In fact, I'm going to quote, if I can find the direct quote, where it actually disputes what he's saying. During our inspection, we found no conclusive or compelling evidence that the 2024 disorder was deliberately premeditated and coordinated by any specific group or network. Most people who took part in the disorder lived locally. Before the 2024 disorder, many of them hadn't been convicted of disorder-related offences. The police arrested 147 children, some as young as 11 years old. The oldest person arrested and convicted for assault was a man aged 81. The events that led to their arrests mainly involved public expressions of dissatisfaction online and on the streets of UK towns and cities. The murders of 3 young girls in Southport triggered these events, but they turned into widespread and often serious disorder because of many other complex factors. That's right. And yet the Prime Minister of our country, of our nation, felt fit to come out and demonize and tar and feather people as being something that they're not. And the problem is, the moment that you call somebody any kind of, group name, far right, you demonize them, you demonize their message, and you demonize what they're protesting about. And it was not only cowardice, but it is something that he must address. He must address. Now, Keir Starmer is a particularly weak individual, right? He is somebody who will play to the crowd. And he realized long ago that if his audience is Black Lives Matters, then he must take the knee. And if his audience is to do with gender, then he must say that men can become women. And that's who Keir Starmer is. And the recent ruling in the Supreme Court meant that he was forced, but many days later, to admit that law is law and law stands, right? So that's who Keir Starmer is. But he has a duty to us as British taxpayers who raised our voices in legitimate concern. He has a duty to address this. Now, whether he will or not is a whole other story. What do you think in the comments? Benny, yes. So why hasn't media called him out on getting his facts wrong, which could have incited violence? And Marco says, because our leader, in quotes, is not for our people. He doesn't serve us. He serves an agenda that doesn't fit the British people. And Duppy is right. You're talking about Blair taking the P, going to war. 1 million people marched on the street. They did indeed, and they still ignored us. Yes, they did indeed. And thank you I've missed these this morning. Thank you so much for the tips in the live chat this morning. Very much appreciate you all for doing that. Really, I do. And I just think it's outrageous. It's just wrong. And what is this version of democracy? Well, it's kind of like it's democracy for me, but not for thee, from a Keir Starmer perspective. So absolutely wrong, absolutely outrageous, should never have been allowed to happen. And we are forced into this situation. And what's wrong is that while they're busy demonizing everybody for quite rightly, because it was an emotional response to what happened to the 3 girls, right? People were emotionally angry, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And people just were like so sick and tired of being sick and tired of saying there is something wrong here, that there is a problem with our infrastructure. We cannot allow the continuation of mass uncontrolled immigration or illegal immigration, however you want to view it. And that is whether it's legal or illegal, by the way, because some people obviously are concerned about immigration full stop. And our dear leaders, quote unquote, refuse to address it. And that is a problem, because we're out here and people were protesting and angry and hurt that 3 innocent lives were taken by an absolute savage. And people protested about that, not because they were coming from some in-group or another. So I think absolutely Keir Starmer we must demand an apology from him. Because you cannot demonize people in that way. And then when the facts actually emerge and it is discovered that you, the Prime Minister, made very serious errors of judgment, then he must apologize. But we all know he won't. And I think that's the key point, isn't it, really? Milford wants to know how we can demand it. Well, the thing is, obviously, Milford, one of the great things is people power, right? So people power is a very real thing. But the problem is, of course, is that we're dealing with a legacy media that is largely absolutely compromised by government. And so we'll trot out whatever line that the government wants them to trot out. I mean, that's a fact. I worked in legacy media for over 30 years. I can tell you that happens. I wasn't one of the puppets, by the way, never was, which is why I did everything I could to be freelance. So I could pick and choose what I wanted to write and talk about. But that isn't how legacy media generally works. These are people, I mean, oftentimes, like you look at someone like the Daily Mail, and there are godparents in political parties attached to the Daily Mail. These are people who go back a long way. These are deep, deep friends. And oftentimes they are deeply compromised. So Milford, in answer to your question, we shouldn't be relying on legacy media to demand anything on our behalf. But what we need is for people to come together in a much more productive manner. We must not allow this infighting that's taking place, this division that they create amongst us. We must not allow it, how they set us apart based on the color of our skin, or on our sex, on our religion. That is being done top down. That's not coming from the ground. Believe me, you know that. I know that. Friends with secret lies and handshakes, says dear Simon. I understand it. Simon has a great understanding about Freemasonry, history of it, in fact, don't you, Simon? And you've educated me a great deal about it and an understanding about it and how that is in itself a structure that surrounds British media, British politicians. Right. I want to welcome in our next guest. He's somebody that I have long admired, who understands the big picture. And we need more people like that, don't we? Because obviously we are on a constant basis, on a day-to-day basis, which is why we don't do that around here on Wake Up. But we're constantly being directed to look here, but don't look there. Whereas my next guest looks everywhere. And that's the great thing about him. Let's welcome him in. Here he is. Michael Tellinger. How are you?
Hello, Sonia. I'm very well. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And it's lovely to meet you. And just listening to you the last few minutes of your broadcast, I tell you, we sing from the same hymn page. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Well, which is why when Julia approached me and said that you're going to be coming to the UK, I believe in July, and would I like to talk to you? I was like, yes. When can we do this? Absolutely. You are, of course, a scientist. You're an explorer. You're an author. You're a lecturer. You are many things. You are the founder of Ubuntu. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Well, it was the Ubuntu movement, but that, in the last 10 years, it has now transitioned and become known as the One Small Town initiative.
Exactly. And you are, well, you're an authority actually on many things. And I find your lectures absolutely fascinating. I love the whole idea about how we have no idea about our history in many respects, because so much of it has been hidden from us. And so where to start with Michael, or as I like to call you, Michael Big Questions Tellinger. And so really, where to start with you? Why do we understand so little about our ancient history?
Well, guess who pays the bills? It's like in everything else, in the research, who pays for the research facilities to operate? They obviously, the big funders that fund the research labs are not going to share the discoveries that they make with the mainstream, because they want to use it to maximize their profits for whatever the tools and gadgets are that they create and technology, or cures for disease, the big pharma research labs. You know the story. So whoever funds the research controls the narrative and controls what information they like to share. So whoever is funding the research of archaeological digs and discoveries will only release what they want to share. And unfortunately, archaeology has also been used, and not just archaeology, but history and anthropology and discoveries of fossils and so forth has been strictly controlled by those who want to, control the narrative of who's who in the zoo, and And in South Africa, for example, is a great example. So during the apartheid years, the apartheid government was using archaeology and history as a tool to benefit their narrative. And the last 30 years, the ANC, the what we can now openly call the Marxist Communist ANC government, has been using history and Southern African history to benefit and promote their narrative. So it's a shocking state of affairs. Our universities, remember, our universities are the ones that do the digs. They go out with the professors and the archaeological teams and students to do these digs. And guess who funds those digs? The digs are funded by certain institutions with big money and donors and funders that have a certain agenda in mind, and they will then stick to their agenda and only release the information they want to serve their agenda. So this is why we know so little about our human history. But as you know, every month, every week, almost on a daily basis, new mind-boggling discoveries are being made of ancient civilizations that are jaw-dropping, that peel away the veil of some mysterious cover-up, that open our minds to what the ancient civilizations were up to, what knowledge they had, what technology they possessed, what structures they were capable of building with that we can't imagine building today.
No.
Yeah. So that's why we know so little about our ancient history.
You just reminded me of a quote. I'm going to paraphrase you very badly, but you'd said that they expect us to believe that many of these kind of megalithic statues were created with hammers, pulleys, and ropes, right? I think that's something you've said, right? And it does seem really farcical because when you look at them, you look at the pyramids or whatever. But give us some sort of insight into that, because obviously it feels that we've actually been subject to brainwashing and propaganda since the start of time, that we didn't need legacy media. Many years ago, they were already creating a false narrative for us.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It seems that this cover up about our history and our origins and so forth goes back a long time. This is not something new. I'll give you an example. So the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because of my discoveries here in South Africa, the ancient ruins of South Africa and Southern Africa, because it actually extends into Zimbabwe, Botswana, some parts of Mozambique, and also even further north into Zambia. So for many years, there's been some low-level awareness of what we call the stone circle ruins of Southern Africa.
Right.
And, they've been spoken about very low level. Not much was written about it. And when I discovered it in 2005, actually, I first discovered, or 2004, these stone circles of Southern Africa, and it blew my mind. And then I realized that they estimated there were about 20,000 of these stone circle structures and ruins. And I thought, wow, that's a lot. Well, a year later, by mid-2008, when I moved into the area where these ruins are and started the research, proper hands-on, physical, walking through the ruins, doing my own research, within 6 months, I realized that there were at least 100,000 of these ruins. Then I started to do some numbers and counting and actually calculating how many of these ruins are there. Is it 100,000? Because I wanted to prove it. I didn't just want to thumb suck it. I wanted to be scientific about it, right? And I'll never forget, I actually called up, at one stage I called up the retired head of archaeology at Wits University, which, as you may know, is the big university in South Africa, the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. That's where I graduated with a degree in pharmacy, a Bachelor of Pharmacy from the Wits Medical School. For many years, it was one of the best medical schools in the world. All the doctors that come from there are now scattered all over the world, by the way. Right. So I phoned up the retired head of archaeology, and now his name escapes me. I can't believe it. And I got him on the phone.
Michael.
Yeah. And I said to him, how many of these stone circle ruins do you think they were, or they are, in South Africa? And without blinking or hesitating, he said, at least 100,000. So I got very excited. I went, oh my goodness, because that's what I think. I think there are about 100,000 ruins. His name is Revel Mason. And I said, Rebel, but we have a problem here. We have an anthropological population problem. Because if we ascribe, because in those days we all believed, including me, that these stone circles were actually built by people as dwellings for humans or animals, right? So if we ascribe 10 people per ruin, if it was dwellings for people, and we have 100,000 of them, then we have a population of 1 million people at some stage in the past in Southern Africa. And there was a bit of silence on the phone, and his response was, well, then there can't be 100,000 ruins. And in that moment, I went, oh my God, he just became, he went straight into the box of mainstream academia.
Right.
Ignore the physical evidence, ignore the ruins don't exist. There they are, but they don't exist, because the history books tell us that there was never a population of 1 million people in the past that could have done such structures or needed such structures. And that's when I realized it's pointless talking to the academia about this. And I continued doing my research. I counted the stone circles with all the best Google Earth photography and aerial photography that I had. And I arrived at the staggering number of 10 million stone ruins.
That's insane. That's actually insane. So we are talking about ancient civilizations here, aren't we?
We're talking about ancient civilizations that I can go into long discussions about this, about how I know this, how far back they go. I can tell you they go back probably 300,000 years, possibly further back in time. And these stone circles were not dwellings for people or animals. They were constructed with very different intention in mind. And this is where all the mainstream academia always
can't cope with it.
They just cannot cope with this. What we have absolute overwhelming evidence is the tools and the artifacts that I've been collecting from among the stone circles since 2007 many of them are unquestionably tools of that are used for highly advanced tools that either generate energy or focus energy or harness energy. And the stone circles themselves, each one is an energy generating device, because we know that the original structures were constructed with no doors and entrances. They weren't made for people or cows or animals. So there are no doors and entrances. It's fully intact walls that vibrate and put out sound frequencies. And those vibrating sound frequencies that create a spiral that move around the walls of the resonating stones are creating magnetic fields, and therefore the moving magnetic fields therefore create electromagnetic fields. And we've measured amazing frequencies from sound, magnetic, and electromagnetic fields coming out of these walls. It's I can talk about this for a week, because I've got almost 20 years of research that has completely ignored my mainstream.
I've got hair standing up on my arms, which I love. I absolutely love, because you're absolutely right. The problem is that we are living in a time where it's all a lot about compliance, and academia is no different to that. And I come through legacy media, so I know exactly how it works there as well. And they want to keep these ideas. They gatekeep these ideas. They don't want to contemplate that the Anunnaki would have existed, or Sumerians, for example, right? Or that anything that is outside of our scope. Do you feel, and now obviously we're living here and now, and I like to think that I'm a decent, intelligent individual, but do you think that we are considerably inferior to what has perhaps roamed the earth before in terms of our intelligence? Have we been dumbed down so much?
I think it's an interesting question. I don't think we're inferior. I think that we've just been manipulated and dumbed down.
Right.
I think we do possess the capacity and the knowledge that we could utilize, that some of these ancient civilizations clearly had. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail. Everything is based on toroidal field, cymatic, sound frequency, vibrational energy. Everything to do with ancient cultures. The moment you start studying that from the creation of the universe and ancient texts, it always comes down to sound, resonance, frequency, vibration, and the sound of the creator. So everything is based on sound, resonance, and frequency. All ancient technology is clearly based on that, which including, like I mentioned already, the stone circles create energy by vibrating the frequencies of the earth, and therefore they create energy. So I don't think we're inferior. I think we've just been manipulated over an extended period for thousands of years now, and especially the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, and just prior to that, some of the most remarkable research and inventions have come out. If you just think about the inventions that in healing, from Royal Raymond Rife to Nikola Tesla and all his knowledge of frequency and generating energy, and others, John Keeley, and I haven't dealt with that for so long now because I've been so focused on One Small Town for the last 10 years that I used to do these lectures all the time. But it's very clear that all that incredible discovery that happened in inventions from the mid 1800s right through to the mid 1900s and beyond, all that technology has been suppressed. The cures for disease have been suppressed. Yes. Yeah,
fact.
It's crazy.
Absolute fact. And the reason I wanted to talk about that, sort of intro our discussion, because I want to talk to you now about gold. I want to talk to you about banks. I want to talk to you about the power of the Vatican and the corporation, the City of London as one example. But the reason that I reflect on that is because you have an extremely rich history. And I think it is important to observe and acknowledge that this is not your first rodeo. You've been around a long time. You will have been attacked for some of your ideas because they do not fit into the status quo. But bit by bit, I do believe, and I agree with you, we have been manipulated. We have been dumbed down. We're not inferior, not at all. But people like you and I, we've broken free from that cage, and we want to see something that is bigger out there that impacts us. So I do just want to briefly talk about the Vatican. Obviously, the big news this week regarding the Vatican is the new Pope. Does it make any difference, do you think?
No, not really. It's just a new gatekeeper, that's all. Yeah. One goes away, another one comes in. That's what can be said about most of the governments around the world. They are manipulated by shadow figures in the behind the veil, the puppet masters that manipulate those that come into the mainstream as politicians, as so-called elected leaders of our governments that are just marching to the beat of the puppet masters behind the screen. It's pretty much the yellow brick road. What's a Wizard of Oz scenario, right?
So painful. We have a regular guest called Godfrey Bloom. I don't know if you're familiar with Godfrey, but he's absolutely brilliant in his understanding of gold. And in fact, a number of our viewers have followed his advice on gold, gone out and purchased it and made a decent amount of profit from it. And gold is something that you talk about. You talk about, you have certainly, the power of gold. And you also talk about how gold is in the Bible even before they mentioned Eve. That is how central gold is. Tell us, why is gold so central to humans?
Yeah, this is, again, one of those subjects that some people are not ready for this information.
Right.
And I've been very careful, especially when I talk about One Small Town, trying to present solutions for the madness and present a solution that I want everybody to embrace it. I don't want people to be scared of me or the message. So I've had to censor myself in some ways. And I hate that. I hate censoring myself because that's not the kind of person I am. But when you talk about solutions for the world, you've got to be careful that you don't come across as a raving lunatic. That some people that that say, "Well, yes, we want a solution for our town." Oh, but aren't you the guy that talks about the little green men and aliens and all this crap? Right. So how can we trust you about a ssolution for our town if you believe in aliens and or the Anunnaki and this kind of stuff? So it's been a very interesting ride for me because and people even attack me on social media and on email, direct emails where they attack me. They say, we love the stories about the gold or the ancient civilizations, but leave the money and leave the banking alone, and or vice versa. Right. We love your solutions for the world, but stop talking about the Anunnaki because you're driving people away. Just going, well, the two are inextricably connected.
Right.
And that connection is gold. That's exactly why it is such an important subject and thread and a link. Like you said, I make it very clear in my book, Slave Species of God, that before Eve was even fathomed or created from Adam's rib, the narrator in the Bible says that he wants to take Adam to the land of Havilah, where there is gold. And you go, wow, that's amazing. Why would God want to take Adam to the place where there is gold? And then you start to read about the Anunnaki and the stronger links and similarities between the creation of Adam and what the Anunnaki texts or the Sumerian texts talk about, the Anunna gods, how they created the first Adamu, and you start going into areas that some people are not ready to face.
Right. And you take them through the Overton window before they're ready to go there. I get that. And I work with that all the time. Even as a legacy media journalist, I was always very aware not to take people too far. I was always the outsider, because in legacy media, they have to have an outsider in order to give some kind of impression of balance, right? So yes. I was their useful idiot in many respects without realizing it. And yes. But you're absolutely right. And the thing is, I think, certainly with maturity, I've reached a point now where I actually don't care what people think. And to a degree, I get it, because I also get when people go to me, you cannot talk about geoengineering because it makes everything else you say look ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, but it's happening. So what do you want me to do about it? Right. And so I'm now forced to I've started to learn how to block out what other people say, because at the end of the day, you have to listen to your inner voice, don't you? And you're very much one for that. You don't strike me as somebody who is easily swayed by the opinion of others. You're very self-possessed, Michael.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm influenced and inspired by opinions or feedback and so forth. If somebody shares new information with me that I don't have, I love it, because I want to explore it, research it, and go, wow, this is fantastic. This is a piece of the puzzle that I was missing. But I'm certainly not worried about attacks or name calling or, those kind of things. It's just, it's water off a duck's back. I've been exposed to it for 20 years now, and it comes with the territory. If you do what I do, you're going to be attacked, and that's okay. God bless them. Have a nice life.
Exactly. And as well as I do, that part of the problem is our banking institutions, central banks, and you have absolutely gone after them. Tell people.
Okay, first of all, you mentioned gold and the origins of gold, and it's important to people and our obsession with gold. Please understand, anyone that's watching this, our obsession with gold comes from the creation of the human race, or the appearance. Let's use the word appearance of the human race, just for want of not creating an argument. So the appearance of the human race, or the Adamu and so forth, is directly connected to the human obsession or to the obsession of gold. The Anunnaki were obsessed with gold. All the ancient Sumerian history, the Sumerian texts that talk about the Anunnaki, their gods, they were obsessed with gold. And all the gold that was mined by the Anunnaki, the obsession was passed on to the slaves that were mining the gold. So our obsession with gold comes from the Anunnaki quest for gold. It's absolutely unquestionable.
Right. It's at the base.
Yeah, if people don't know that, then they have no idea about anything, right? And then the value of gold became valuable because it belonged to the gods. All throughout history, and ancient discoverers, when they arrived in India, in the Americas, even South and even North America, where they arrived, all the ancient civilizations had gold, vast amounts of gold. And whenever they asked the explorers, the European explorers asked these natives, where does the gold come from? Who does it belong to? The answer was always, it belongs to the gods. The gold belongs to the gods, right? And modern people don't know this unless they've gone and researched this. Our civilization, right now, we don't know that. And then you start seeing the origins of money. Now, again, please, those people that I don't want to take up the whole interview about lecturing about this, but if you want to know about the origins of money, please get my book, Ubuntu Contributionism, which is also the foundational document for the One Small Town initiative, the model of the One Small Town community. It creates prosperity and abundance for its people forever, not just temporarily. And read the Ubuntu Contributionism book so that you learn about the true origins of gold, the quest for gold, and the origins of money that goes back some 4,000 BC. And the earliest, or it could be even further back in time, when we throw these numbers around and these dates around, you've got to throw them around with an open mind that it might be very different from what we think. But most of the time, it's actually further back in time than we imagine. And we see where the first origins of money comes from the temples that were created by these first royal priest kings. These royal, when it says in the Sumerian text, it says, and then the royalty was lowered to earth from heaven, and the first priest kings were appointed by the gods. And these first priest kings suddenly owned all the land in the world, and that's where royalty, the origins of royalty, comes from. This is spectacular information. And then these first priest kings, over thousands of years, because they apparently lived for thousands of years, according to these Sumerian texts, They built their temples, and from their temples, they started to issue these little clay tablets, and they asked people to bring in their gold and their silver. And in return, they gave them a little clay tablet that said, John Smith just brought, 5 pieces of silver into the temple. And here's a piece of clay tablet that says that, we owe him 5 pieces of silver or so much gold. That's the true origins of money. And the Rothschilds just perfected that by turning it into promissory notes we use today. And they were very, very clever, very, very smart. And they then went around the world since 1760 or whenever it was, and or 1670 or whenever they started, their shenanigans with their central banking, and they perfected that ancient practice of promissory notes, negotiable instruments, and bills of exchange, and they perfected that to the point that we're now stuck with that, and we think this is just the normal way things are supposed to work. And we've all been fooled.
Yeah, but you're not somebody who's prepared to just accept the status quo, though, Michael. So, and you're right, we don't have a huge amount of time to unpack all of this, but just tell us briefly what you have attempted to do in order to change that system. Obviously, one small town is a huge part of that, isn't it? It's you stamping. You're saying this is a way to proceed forward for a better society. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. Having all this background knowledge, understanding the origins of money, which is the primary tool of enslavement. So we've got to realize that we can't fight the system. The current puppet masters control everything. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And I'm sure many of your viewers will know what we're referring to here. So you can't fight the system. As Buckminster Fuller very cleverly said, if you want to create a new system, you don't fight the system. You simply create a new system that makes the existing system obsolete. And that's what we're doing. We're laying the foundation with one small town without having to fight the system, fighting the banks, fighting the government, or opposing anyone, without any violence, opposition, or conflict. We use the current system and what I call the tools of enslavement as tools of liberation. We make everything work for us, work for ourselves. We unite in small towns as a community. And it doesn't have to be everybody in the small town. It can start with a small number of people. We agree to cooperate, to collaborate, start working together towards a common goal, fixing our town, providing the things that we desperately need. By working together, each one contributes a certain amount of time a week. In the one small town model, it's 3 hours a week that every member contributes. It's a very low number. Everybody's got 3 hours a week. And with this labor force that we choose to contribute ourselves, so we're not creating jobs for ourselves, we're creating our own labor force, because then with our members, we then decide what kind of agriculture we're going to do for ourselves, how much food do we need to feed ourselves, what kind of businesses can we start, write the business plans, and so forth. So it's a fully integrated community development and upliftment program that we've created over almost 2 decades now. The One Small Town Initiative. And it's just a beautiful, simple system that allows, that gives the people of small towns the tools that they need to work together in a way with a blockchain platform, with their own reward system, the Infinity token. That's a private membership reward system. It's not a cryptocurrency. It's traded in open markets. It's the most stable community token in the world. All of this has been put together so that we can turn our small towns into places of prosperity and abundance. Just think about this. If you have a town of 5,000 people and everybody contributes 3 hours a week, we suddenly have 15,000 hours of our own free labor that we're contributing. 15,000 hours, that's, what is that? That's a week. That's 60,000 hours. When my math's letting me down here, 60,000 hours a month of free labor.
Right, the accumulation of it all. But here's the thing, Michael, let me just throw this in the mix, because some of the people, like many of our viewers, are all about opting out of the system. Trust me on that, right? Absolutely, because we realize that it is not for us, unquestionably. But one of the comments which strikes me here is that, but humans are too lazy. They're too selfish to get involved in something like this. There has to be more than us just being that way, right? You're meeting people who are much more inspirational, who are prepared to give their time and energy. So, but do you agree that there is a block in terms of humanity being selfish?
Yes and no. I don't think humanity is selfish. It's just we've been so brainwashed and we've been so pushed down and demoralized and
Like
depressed.
dog eat dog.
Yeah, it's so, and the whole rat race of cold, horrible capitalism that, you know, I've got to get to the top of the pile.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lead this industry. I'm gonna destroy all my opposition. Well, that's not a solution. Destroying opposition means you destroy other people's lives. You destroy lives, people's families. That's not what we want. We don't want to destroy each other in the chase for financial success and capitalist success and success in a company. So everything that we do at the moment is really fighting ourselves. What the One Small Town does, we take a step back and we say, hold on, we don't want to fight each other in our businesses. We want to cooperate. So instead of having 20 bakeries in the town, let's have one bakery and we actually own it as a community. So when we bake bread, we're baking bread for everybody and we're exporting the bread to whoever wants to buy bread from us. So it's just a subtle adjustment. From competing against each other, we choose to cooperate and collaborate. And that changes everything. At the moment, you know
Yes,
this.
Yes.
We are at times that people are desperate all over the world. It's not just third world countries or South Africa, where we have probably the biggest unemployment in the world, courtesy of our communist government for the last 30 years. It's despicable what they've done. And people are just desperate. They just want a way out. Most of the options that have been given the people have not provided solutions. So people are by nature very doubtful and very suspicious. So you've got to be very clear with the message that when you approach the people in the community, say, this is what we're going to do. It's not, I'm not the guy that's driving it. You're driving this. This is your initiative. You choose what you want to do. We're just providing the platform that allows you to do this, so that if somebody wants to invest money into your businesses as a community, the money isn't going to go missing in somebody's personal bank account, that there's accountability, there's a tracking system, so you know if somebody has contributed their 3 hours to the community, so they can get the benefits from all the businesses.
Right.
So that's the key thing here. So once people know that there's actually a plan and there's a robust platform and a blockchain that manages all of this, it gives them a lot more trust and faith that we're actually taking this very seriously. The last 3 years we've spent building our One Small Town platform and the blockchain that is quite spectacular for any individual or community to try and do this, to manage their businesses, or distribution of funds, or checking who's clocked in for their shift and who hasn't. It'll cost you millions to do that. Well, we now have that, and any town, anyone, anywhere in the world can sign up and start using the One Small Town platform to start the One Small Town initiative in their community. But we need to help the people understand what to do and how to go about it. It's easy for me because I've been doing this for nearly 20 years. I know exactly what to do. If I arrived in your town today, I know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. What's the first phone call I'm going to make? Who are the first people I'm going to meet? What are the first steps I'm going to do to start getting the foundations in place? New people and new ambassadors don't know that. They still need to learn this. And this is why I'm coming to the UK, coming to England to do these lectures and these workshops, because they don't work as well like this, remotely. It doesn't work that well.
No, I hear you. And I love that. And because obviously people are saying, how can I participate? Well, very simple. Yes. I've already put a link in the description to One Small Town. So that's vital. So let me just look at this. Saturday, 5th of July. Now you are the king of the long lectures. You can lecture for hours on end. How long is this one for?
So there are two workshops, 2 full-day workshops. They start at 9 in the morning and go to 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. The first one is in Buxton on the 29th of June, and the next weekend is the 5th of July, and that one is in Dorking.
Yes.
So if you're sick and tired of what's going on in the world, if you're sick and tired of seeing your little town falling apart month by month, everything is just degrading, everything is just working less and less, and you want to do something about it, One Small Town is the thing to do. And it is quite frankly, and you call me arrogant if you want to, there is no other initiative like One Small Town in the world. Over the last 20 years, I've engaged with countless, what's often called intentional communities, which includes some of the well-known so-called communities that I'm not going to mention by name because I don't want to slander them, and even the kibbutzes in Israel. And every single one of them is a disaster. Everyone has failed us. Not one of them is an example to the world what we should be doing. And that's why we're not doing it. So what I've done with One Small Town is taken all the lessons from why have those intentional communities failed, including personal friends that started trying to start these on farms and beautiful farms with pieces of land and all this. They all end up in bickering, backstabbing, infighting with a catastrophic breakdown, sometimes within months and sometimes within a few years. None of them have worked. One Small Town has taken almost 2 decades to put into place because we cannot fail. We have to succeed.
You
and
don't
every
sound
time
like you're going to fail. There's a lot of determination there.
No, we're not failing. We're not failing.
You can't afford to. I mean, you simply can't afford to, because this is your life's work now, and that's the important thing. Before you leave us today, I always like to give, excuse me, a final word to our guests. We will obviously see you at the end of June and the beginning of July in the UK for 2 dates. Any chance that you'll be adding any more dates to that?
Well, that's open. Absolutely. That's why we've got, I think, I arrive a few days before the 29th of June. And then that week in between the 29th and the 5th, I'm open to any meetings or meeting with people in towns who want to have personal engagements with me. Please contact Julia, our UK ambassador, at uk@onesmalltown.org. That's Julia's email address, uk@onesmalltown.org, and try and organize a meeting. We could have, other meetings in the evening, face-to-face, meet small groups. We can discuss strategy, whatever. I'm open to all of this. I'm coming there for, I think, 10 days. So I'm going to work as hard as I can to really plant some important seeds that I believe will grow into the first small town, as I call Cinderella small towns in the UK.
Love the sound of that. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We truly appreciate it. Love to South Africa, which is presumably where you're talking to us from. And take good care of yourself. And we look forward to seeing you when you come to the UK. And we will bring you back on Wake Up. When you're in the UK, if we get an opportunity to, which I very much hope we do, everybody, Michael Tellinger. Wonderful to have you with us today, Michael.
Thank you, Sonia. Great talking to you.
You too. Lovely talking to you. Wonderful talking to Michael Tellinger. And I see questions in the comments that I've already addressed with Michael. Gold, Ubuntu. I've already addressed that. People just switching on late. Possibly, very possibly. I did see somebody mention council tax. I want to talk about Wayne Layton, who was on with us recently. Lovely, lovely Wayne. He sent me a series of emails. I like Wayne very much, got a great deal of time for him. Let me just find the information that Wayne sent me. Well, first of all, he very kindly thanked me for him coming on Wake Up, which was absolutely great. And he said that he can get no support from legacy media. He said, I just wanted to show my appreciation for you giving me a platform. Your interview has created so much support, and I'm truly grateful for it. I've tried other mainstream press and got no response. You are truly a journalist with integrity, and I appreciate that very much, Wayne. And Wayne, of course, came on because Wayne has done something in law that nobody else has managed to do. He set a precedent. He has been able to prove that the bailiffs and the people that are sent out regarding issues to do with council tax have no authority. And Wayne had been questioning issues to do with his council tax because he wasn't in the property full time. And there were issues around it. And the councillor sent out bailiffs. And Wayne was able to prove in court that these bailiffs have no authority. And Wayne is back in court this coming week. He has a case management conference. And it's really interesting because I promised him that I'd let people know, because he wants as many people as possible to go to the Royal Courts of Justice on Tuesday. And he said, it's interesting because he said the court tried to restrict it to 10 people. Now, he very much wants this to be open to the public because this matters to us all, right? It matters to us all. And but he said they went backwards and forwards. After a few emails of exchange, they have now allowed a full public gallery, which is great news. So this is at the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand, London, on Tuesday, the 13th of May at 3:00. I would advise you to get there probably not long after 2, because if you have to go through there's quite a great deal of checking at when you enter the Royal Courts of Justice. It can take some time to work your way through, certainly after lunch, and there can be queues at 2:00. So if you want to be there, I would advise you to get there early. And Wayne has asked me to promote the group on Facebook, Stop the Abuse. He said it all started with you, with Wake Up. We love that. Look at the attached growth rate picture. Now, this made my heart sing. And Wayne sent me an image of the growth of their group when he came on. And it was very low, extremely low. It was less than 400. Actually, no, it was actually on naught. It was actually... So it wasn't even registering around April the 11th. He's now heading to 2,000 members of that group. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much for people getting involved. And what's his full name again? Wayne Leighton, Leighton. Grand rising to you, DK. Robert is going to support Wayne, which is great. Is touring the UK next month. You should go and see and meet him, says Josh. You're talking about Jimmy Dore. I wonder if you would like to come on, have a talk to us. Where are the men of England? Says Mikey. You're welcome, Blue Nomad. You're welcome. So I'm absolutely thrilled about that. And on top of that, I said to Wayne, come back on. Let us know what happens once you've been in court. And he said, yes, I'd love to do the official update on your channel. I've been receiving a few messages from others wanting to do an interview post-hearing, but I would much prefer to do it exclusively with you, as you have made a significant impact in promoting this, for which I am truly grateful. And I love that loyalty. I love it. I love it so much. I don't bring people on here with the idea that we are going to be praised. I literally give a platform to people that I believe needs to have a platform. And Wayne was one of them. And I'm pretty sure that I've used his court judgment in court myself because it was precedent setting. I've had people come on Wake Up and talk about Wayne's first judgment. And so when he approached me, I was like, yeah, absolutely. This is really interesting stuff. So I love it. I love it. And well done, Wayne. Really proud of you. Really proud of you. Soldier says, I'm a man of England. Are you, or are you just self-identifying as one? You can never tell these days. It's a dodgy business we live in. I want to briefly touch on the Data and Access Bill. Of course, this has had various incarnations. Let me just show you the latest, if I can bring it in, if it will allow me. I don't know if it will actually. Oh, let's try that. Let's try that. Slides and PDFs. Ooh, your computer. Hello. No, darn diggity, desktop. Let's just see. There you go. I think this is it. This is the latest incarnation of it. And I first made a video about this bill in November 2023. And lots of people are making it seem as if this has only come about. Not at all. They have been trying this for a series of time. And the idea, of course, is that there will be this overarching power that will kind of step up in terms of our data, right, and have authority over our data. And I'm sure you've seen the headlines. And one of the reasons that my patrons wanted me to talk about it was because there was a lot of talk about how government could access your bank accounts. And the idea is that the overarching big idea is that the aim is to eliminate fraud. Digital fraud. They're having a bloody laugh, right? We know that's not what it's about at all. And they say that the bill is a provision about access to customer data and business data. What they want to do is they want to be able to sell your data more than ever before. And the bill itself goes into details in terms of your medical records. Now, our medical records have long been sold together with our blood, by the way. If you give to blood, do be aware that our blood is largely owned by American corporations. Just to let you know that. And I did used to give blood quite regularly, although I don't know why, because I was fainted afterwards. But the reason I did was because I'm rhesus negative, and they're always looking for rhesus negative blood, especially universal blood, which is mine. But I just want to give a shout out to MP David Davis. MP David Davis is not somebody that politically we would necessarily agree on, but this is a man who's prepared to stand up against all manner of actions against the British people. And he has been shouting about this bill for a very long time. In fact, he started shouting about it when it started off as the Data Protection and Digital Information Bill, right? So they've now got it down to the data access bill, right? But the fact is that this is a snooper's charter. That's what it is. This is about overreaching power, seeing what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, having an insight into what we're doing. And it will also enable, obviously, a digital system to come in as well. And so it's practically through. I mean, even though they have tried this in one guise or another over the last few years, it is practically through the system now. In fact, they're now on the last stage, and they're on the amendment stage, right? Because they've obviously been back in Parliament, they've been in the Lords, but they're on the amendment stage. And after this amendment stage, it will then go for royal assent. Now, royal assent is where the king goes, yeah. And he can actually say no, but they never do. Right. When it comes to royal assent, they never do. One of the reasons that I could not stand Queenie, I mean, apart from all the obvious reasons, was that she gave royal assent to the particularly cruel welfare reform bill. And I just thought somebody of her great wealth and her great experience and close to the end of her life, I mean, surely duck the system and say, no, I will not have my sick and disabled people harmed like this. But she didn't. So absolutely, Charlie boy will give it royal assent. OK. And one of the things that people are deeply concerned about, especially coming from the kind of gender argument and all the stuff that went through the Supreme Court the other week, is that many people are saying, including wonderful Stephanie Davis-Arai, who I've interviewed numerous times, as she's in my trans doc from Transgender Trend. She has said that the data bill is the latest attempt to bring in self-ID by the back door, right? And it is compatible with the Equality Act. So there's a lot to be said about it. But the way they're selling it to us is that the aim is to combat financial crime. But the reality is this is about sharing your data in certain circumstances under this guise of preventing financial fraud. And they are describing it as one bill to rule them all. Right. And I mean, that's literally is the way that they're describing it, and saying that many other acts of parliament passed recently rely almost entirely on the data provisions within the new bill in order to be able to optimize the performance of them. OK, there's lots of problems. People have been talking out about it for a very long time. I can't even begin to articulate fully the very serious vulnerabilities of sharing people's medical data. OK, we have guidelines. England is actually with issues of data. England is actually at the forefront in terms of the protection of people's data and security. And I know that because obviously Information Commissioner's Office. And if there are data breaches, you can report data breaches there. And some people use the law courts to address data breaches to them. But this is going to make people more vulnerable, no doubt about it. I mean, I'm reaching the stage now where it is almost impossible. And I do try and take things on a moment by moment basis, an individual basis, but it's becoming almost impossible in my lifetime now to view any acts that are going through Parliament, then the Lords, and then given royal assent as for the people. Almost impossible. Yes, James, absolutely well said. Combating financial crime while the financial criminals are all in Westminster. Em's been listening. Good to hear it. Serious censoring today. Who's censoring you, Maria? Maria, we got your message. What's that? Don't know how what they're talking about here. I go back into internet accounts once I finish them and change all the details. That way it's saved. I have no idea what they're discussing here. Acts and statutes are not law. But the problem is that they have the police on their side, the police and the army, to use against us, right? I want to talk about this. Madeleine McCann, The Unseen Evidence, new Channel 4 documentary. I watched it, so you really don't have to. right? You really don't have to. My favorite description of it so far has come from lovely profiler Pat Brown, who's described it as a crockumentary, and she's absolutely right. And this is, we briefly referred to this on Wednesday. It was aired Wednesday night. It has been produced by The Sun with an involvement of ITM Productions, and then the broadcaster is Channel 4. And the title alone, obviously, is absolutely misleading. It's humongously misleading. I mean, I don't even know where to start on how misleading it is. But let me tell you, the unseen evidence does not relate to Madeleine McCann. And these people are utterly deplorable. If there's any unseen evidence, it actually relates to Christian Bruckner, the German patsy, who they've been absolutely determined to place this crime on. They describe him as the prime suspect, the only suspect. But you know, the thing is, if British police believe that he's the only suspect, then why have they just got some more money for Operation Grange? Because isn't that about finding missing Madeleine? And if they found the suspect who claims that she's dead, then that doesn't even make any sense. So what happened was that the Sun newspaper claimed to have obtained new evidence. No, actually, it's the whole documentary is largely rehashed old news. And the Sun newspaper, whoever trusts the Sun newspaper to deliver factual information, and particularly pertaining to Madeleine McCann. And so what you have are these kind of like series of moments. First of all, what I would say is I've worked for actually every one of these organizations. Briefly for the Sun, I once did a piece actually about the sexualization of young people, including Miley Cyrus. And I saw that as particular triumph to get that in the pages of the Sun, because I also talked about the problems attached to like page 3 and the exploitation of women. And they published that in the Sun, which was interesting. So anyway, but by the by, so I've worked for the Sun, I've worked for ITM Productions, and I've freelanced on Channel 4. So I know all the organizations involved. This is an unholy trinity coming together. And they've come together because all three of these organizations have pushed the abduction theory since the beginning. So latching onto this story is extremely useful to them. It helps them validate their lies. Okay. But as I say, they start off from the premise that this is unseen evidence regarding Madeleine McCann. It's nothing of the sort. I'm absolutely sick and tired of these filthy exploiters exploiting the memory of a dead child. I believe Madeleine sadly is not with us. Okay. And they're actually saying that now. Okay. But so what you have is the Sun reporters. And there was like Nick Parker, the foreign editor of the Sun, and he described Madeleine saying that she was a particularly photogenic child. You want to be careful there, Nick. You're starting to sound a little bit like David Payne. I find it quite creepy the way some people describe Madeleine McCann. I really do. And they brought together a number of media hacks who have pushed the abduction theories. Basically, it's a documentary that's a jolly for all of them. And the script is absolutely ridiculous. They claimed that before Christian B, Madeleine's story had faded into the background until 2020. That is a lie. That's beyond ridiculous. Madeleine McCann is certainly the world's most famous missing child, and probably the world's most famous missing person. It's ridiculous to suggest that German police announcing that Christian Bruckner was the number one suspect brought her story back into the public domain. That is absurd. Absolute absurd. The script itself is ridiculous. They say that the police have been investigating Christian B since 2017. They claimed his phone was placed near the Ocean Club, which is where Kate and Jerry McCann and their friends were said to be dining, where Madeleine was said to have been taken. And I've seen some bad Madeleine McCann documentaries in my time, but I think I've actually found the worst. In the whole 18 years since Madeleine has been missing, this is absolute broadcasting excrement. It really is. And all the stuff is really about Christian Bruckner. And we know what it's about because the German authorities are desperate to keep him inside. They lost their case against him last year. There were 5 charges against him, including to do with Hazel Behan. Hazel Behan is featured in this Channel 4 crockumentary, mockumentary, whatever you want to call it, but it ain't a documentary. Let's just call it visual excrement. That's what I prefer to call it. And so Hazel is featured, and she was a holiday worker working in Portugal in Praia de Rocha, which is just kind of down the road from Praia de Luz, which is where Madeleine was reported missing from. And Hazel is in this, and she was sexually assaulted when she came back from work one night. a masked intruder. And when the whole story came out to do with Christian Bruckner in 2020, and they said he was the main suspect, Hazel said, this is the man who sexually assaulted me. And so she maintains that it was Christian Bruckner. And all of that may be true, but literally none of that has anything to do with Madeleine. And that's what makes it so horrible, like so utterly repugnant. This was a hatchet job, be in no doubt whatsoever. And so what's happened is that German police are desperate to keep Christian Bruckner inside. And let me be clear here. I am not here doing a PR job for Christian Bruckner. He is, by all accounts, a thoroughly reprehensible, dangerous individual, should be near neither woman or child. But that still doesn't make him the man or the person who took Madeleine McCann. And he didn't. I mean, he absolutely didn't. And they're all such liars together because they make it seem as if this is it. This is what they've got now. It's going to change everything. No, it didn't. It really didn't. And I'm so sick and tired of these media organizations hyping up lies. And so the thing is, the whole thing with Christian Bruckner is based on such tenuous, ridiculous information. It kind of emanates from this guy called Helga B, who knew Christian Bruckner. They were at a music festival together a long time ago. Helga B, his own problematic history, and has actually been proven to be somebody who is not trustworthy in terms of witness statements, but the police decided to believe him. And Helga B claimed that Christian Bruckner had essentially confessed to taking Madeleine. They'd had a conversation about a girl, and Christian Bruckner responded to Helga B, well, she didn't scream. And so Helga B took it that Christian Bruckner had taken Madeleine, and they've run with that. They've absolutely run with that. And the thing is, as I say, Helga B is an unreliable witness, but that tells you how desperate these individual forces are to create their patsy. Because British media cannot bear the fact that the truth is almost certainly closer to home about what happened to Madeleine McCann. And British media have systematically failed. And every one of those organizations have. And so I started to look at people who were involved and behind it. So Hazel makes an appearance, and as I say, absolute awful allegations against Bruckner, but none of it has anything to do with Madeleine. And it's seen that they're all attaching that. So I looked into it, who was involved. Channel 4, the commissioning editor is Adam Vandermark. And this is where it got interesting, because he used to be an executive producer at ITM Productions. But before that, and quite a lot before that, for a period of time, he was the editor at This Morning. Well, he was the editor at This Morning when I probably had the most gigs at This Morning. So he was somebody who vouched for me a lot to sit on the sofa and take part in debates, right? But here's what's interesting is that This Morning has always been an absolute gatekeeping operation when it comes to Madeleine McCann. They have absolutely gatekept the official story, and so he's been part of that. So it's interesting because Adam's trajectory is he went through his ITN Productions. I worked at ITN, same situation. I was a consulting and contributing editor at ITN, and they allowed me to cover all manner of stories, bring all manner of stories to be covered, but questioning the official abduction narrative of Madeleine McCann was not one of them. And where ITN Productions have come in is it's this glorious footage, by the way. Only one thing that I can say about it is absolutely fantastic. Never before seen footage of the crime scene. So ITN Productions love using their drones everywhere. And so what you get, these huge sweeping views and vistas of the area, which is great. And a lot of their story, by the way, the new evidence that they're talking about is to do with USBs and hard drives that they found. And again, nothing to do with Madeleine, because believe me when I say this, if the German police had any evidence to truly link Christian Bruckner to Madeleine McCann, they would have already presented it. They lost in court last year. It wasn't anything to do with Madeleine. He has never been charged with Madeleine because they simply don't have the evidence. And so what happened was these three British organizations, got together, and they, they're covering their tracks. That's what they're doing. They're covering their tracks. And honestly, the whole thing was written like a Sun editorial. It's just truly one of the most appalling documentaries I've seen in a long time. And I have to agree with Babs on X, who said one of the saddest aspects about this case is how the media still use Madeleine and this case as a cash cow to dip in to whenever there is an increase in circulation. A missing child presumably dead, and they just want to keep the gravy train going as long as they can. Sickening, sickening indeed. And our friends Only Cans did a podcast about MSM headlines on Wednesday after Wednesday's show, and I recommend seeing it, and I'll put the link in the description after the show. Right, so yes, I watched it, so you don't have to. It is absolutely broadcasting excrement brought to you by 3 organizations that actually should be tried for their crimes against the British public. Because bear in mind that those media organizations continue to push the idea of an abduction, and we, the British people, are continuing to fund it via Operation Grange. I believe that these organizations and these so-called journalists are traitors. And I'm not having it. So it's rubbish. Briefly, before we go, no, I want to just quickly touch on that. Quick update on what is going on with the Diddy case, because it is interesting. It does interest me a lot, not least because I have a history with some of the people involved when I was a former music journalist. If I can just find some of my notes, that would be very lovely and very wonderful. Here we go. Yeah, just some brief interesting stuff. Obviously, where am I? Why am I not on a bigger screen? There we go. They're preparing for opening arguments on Monday. They've been doing jury selection all this week. The jurors have been asked all type of questions. Have they already made up their minds about him? Because the idea is to whittle down the jury from... They had well in excess of 100. Some people quoted close to 200, but I would say it was probably the mark between that. And the idea is they had to whittle it down from that 100 plus to 45 to the final 12. And they'll also have some alternates should any of the final 12 fall ill. And some jurors who have been dismissed so far include a woman who said that she had been abused and didn't feel that she could judge him fairly. So she was dismissed. And another man who was dismissed from jury selection said he had worked for HBO, had a Diddy documentary. So obviously conflict going on there. And I was listening to an American lawyer talk about what was the profile of a good juror. And it's very interesting. And he actually said that Diddy's defense are very clear about what they need, and they'd be stupid to go outside of this. And it described the profile for a good jury for Diddy's trial to be a man. You don't want a woman. A woman, this lawyer said, is gonna see all the problems, will have been in contact with men like Diddy, or allegedly. And so you don't want a woman, you want a man. You want a man who is between 30 to 45 and who may find Diddy and the culture that he is part of, kind of hip hop culture, relatable. Ideally, they want as many Black people on the jury as possible, because if you think we've got problems in the UK in division, you ain't seen nothing yet. In US, it is really problematic. They are often absolutely separated along racial lines. It's horrible. But here's where I think it's going to get interesting. This is the star witness. This is Cassie, and she's pregnant. I think she's pregnant with her 3rd child. She's a former partner of Diddy. Infamous video where he's chasing her down a corridor, beating her, trying to drag her back. But here's where the problem is. Diddy's defense team, part of their defense will be proving that Cassie was complicit in these orgies, these freak-offs, whatever you want to call them. And imagine the optics on this. This is why I think the optics in court is really interesting, which is why if you go to court, it's always a good idea to look as smart as humanly possible. And that includes if you're going to support Wayne Layton, please look as smart as possible, because appearances really matter, and none more so than in court. Just want to say that. And so Cassie is rocking up pregnant. She's the star witness. What defense lawyer is going to want to be put in a position to portray her as some sort of, alleged prostitute who has been engaged and involved in it? It's a problem. We need all pregnant women on the jury, says Rupert. Being mean and I don't know what that's about, Randy. Sorry, there's a conversation going on that I don't know about, but that's fine. So anyway, because his defense team want to make out that she enjoyed all of it. She enjoyed the freak-off. She enjoyed it. But making out all those things about a pregnant woman is a risky strategy. And I was also listening to Lisa Bloom, who represents represents some people involved in this trial. Lisa Bloom represented Women Against Trump. And actually, she made a comment saying that she believes that Donald Trump sees kind of like sexual misconduct as a quality to employ people into office. And she used the example of Pete Hegseth. But you know, the thing is, I think the biggest thing that they're gonna be dealing with here is the difficulty of not being prejudiced, because he's well known. The whole thing is, it's all around the world. Some people call it distraction. I posted a video on it the other day, and the first comment was, this is a distraction, and it may well be, but the point being is that there's a lot of very influential people who are tied up in this, and I think some of it is really painful, especially having dealt with a lot of survivors of child abuse. And so having to get on the stand, they're having to relay things that may be shameful for them, which is why some people are hiding their identity. And at least one of Diddy's male accusers, who they call John Doe in America, is ashamed to reveal his identity, because his allegation is that he is straight and he was raped by a man. So this can create an incredible, enormous amount of shame for people. So just saying. And what else to tell you before we leave today? Thank you as ever to our wonderful donators. I see that there are new flyers circulating for the We Object to the Geoengineering Experiments. That is, of course, 21st of June in Hyde Park, London. I'm going to be there. And so is Mark Devlin and Francis O'Neill. Francis O'Neill will be with us next Wednesday, actually talking. And the Daz Band and Unregistered Chickens. I've never heard of Unregistered Chickens before, except on that flyer, but I love that name. Simon needs a Sonia mug. Oh, we're doing new merch. We are doing new merch, just in negotiation at the moment, a whole range. Plain Station says more shame among male rape victims than females, less support too. There is less support, but in part because of the silence around it. But I absolutely agree with you. It is a genius name. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Right. What I want to say before I leave you today, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. Donators as ever, thank you. I appreciate you greatly. The behind the scenes video is now available. Anybody that is contributing on the live chat, please email me your address. I want to WeTransfer you my behind the scenes, and it's me in Teddington, and I go across all manner of things. How Alan Turing worked at the NPL, the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, how Teddington was a media centre and where a lot of great British comedy lived here. And thank you, Paul Carden, because there's loads of blue plaques all over the place in Teddington about, you know, people who were born here or lived here, whether that was Noel Coward or Alan Turing or Benny Hill, you name it. And lovely Paul Carden, who's often in our chat, sent me a copy, enjoyed the video, saw it on my Patreon yesterday. And he sent me a blue plaque, which said Sonia Poulton, truth breaker, lived here. I love that. Thank you so much, Paul. I truly appreciate that. Right, before we go, can I bring this in? Thames TV was at Teddington. It absolutely was. This is a favorite expression of mine. Don't look back. You're not going that way. And it kind of came to me yesterday. Something happened and I was on like this, you know, when you're on a cusp of returning to your old you or continuing on the path that you're on. Well, something happened to me yesterday that made me do that. It wasn't major, but it was enough to make me consider this expression. It's an expression I absolutely love. Great songs have been written about this. One of my personal faves, by the way, is Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis. Yeah, I appreciate they may behave like tossers half the time, but it's still a great message. It's still a great song and they're great musicians, right? And the thing about Don't Look Back, You're Not Going That Way is I use it whenever I feel stuck. Okay. And don't look back, look forward. And because the whole idea of it, what is encompassed in that wee small message is this whole idea of the past is spent. We literally can't do anything to change the past other than be educated by it and other than use it as a vehicle to a better future. And that's how I consider the past. I am not one for looking back. I am a fire sign, if you believe in all that, but I am a fire sign. So fire travels forward. It doesn't go backwards. And so I am one who's constantly moving on. And but I think it's a really encouraging phrase if you feel particularly stuck at the moment or in limbo, because what it does is it forces you to focus on your future. And when we look back, oftentimes we're full of kind of like remorse and regret. I wish I'd have done it this way. I wish I'd done it that way. What a waste of actual time. What about using the message of the past to make sure that you don't repeat whatever it was that you regret? And the thing is that when we look back, and some people cannot stop looking back, there are whole industries that are about looking back, but you do not grow by looking back other than to learn from your experience. And one of the very useful things, I think, that if you are somebody who looks back and you want to try and work out how to break away from that habit, right? One of the things that I did, because I used to, you know, the thing is, I love the whole idea of maturity and getting older, because just so little actually bothers me now. Only like big stuff bothers me, but little stuff that used to bother me doesn't have that power anymore. And one of the things that I do, if I start myself on a path of looking back, I look at the obstacles I overcame, right? And because I think that's a real good motivational tool. Some people feel stuck in a mindset, right? They're like, I've never had any money. I'll never have any money. That's a stuck, broke mindset. And it's a poor, impoverished mindset. Whereas your very existence in a world that costs just to live, right? Your very existence it's radical itself. Okay. You've clearly overcome many obstacles, even to be able to listen to me saying what I'm saying right now, even from birth. It's a miracle that we're even born. There are so many things that can stop life, you know, coming into creation, whether that is, you know, abortions or problems in utero. It is miraculous. I mean, even the fertilization of you know, how spermatozoa works, for example, it's miraculous. Is it a miracle? Our lives are a miracle. You've overcome obstacles to get to this point, and looking back only takes you back. And so my thing is that we should always keep looking forward, do everything we humanly can, and try not to allow negative voices to pull you down. It can be so easy sometimes when I look in the comments and I see people being negative to get pulled down by them. But I have to accept the fact that I don't know what they're going through. They may be going through a really hellish life, right? That my words may not have any impact on them whatsoever. And so all I can do is wish them well and wish them love. We don't invite negativity around here, and it's not something that we will put up with for an inordinate amount of time. And dwelling backwards rather than looking forwards is not good for anybody. It's not good for your health. And by the way, the more time you look backwards, literally, it's sabotaging your good health and your potential to build a better future. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it's wonderful to have you with us, truly. And I do end on a positive note, because I think that's important. I think it's important to make it positive. We talk about such heinous things on this show, because that's my work, unfortunately, that it's absolutely vital and important that we end on a positive note. And that is what I do. High vibes only, Marcusson. Absolutely. Right. Lovely people. Love you lots. Thank you for being in the comments today. Thank you to all our wonderful guests. Fantastic guests. 11:11. Absolutely the point I'm going to end on. And I am going to end on a quote. And that is: the only time you should ever look back is to see how far you have come. Take good care of yourself, lovely people. I will see you Monday. Have a fabulous weekend. Thank you to all the mods, all the wake up mods. They're brilliant. Take good care of yourself, everybody. Lots of love. See you Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.